As promised, we are joined by retired Navy captain and helicopter pilot Kenny Golden. And now we got connected to Captain Golden through Mike Gooding, one of the great military reporters, for my money, in the history of the medium. And so we'll start, before we dive into anything, are you still in touch with Mike? Have you seen him recently? We know he's retired.
I am the commanding officer of the Hampton Roads Association of Naval Aviators.
Okay.
We run it like a squadron.
Yeah.
And Mike is a member of our squadron.
Oh, very good. So you see him all the time?
See him at least once a month.
Okay. Can we get an update? How's Mike doing?
He's doing good. He's hanging in there. He's
Yeah.
got the trouble he has with the disease he's fighting, and
Yeah.
but he's tolerating that and taking the meds like he should,
Yeah.
and doing all the things that he should do, and staying out of the heat.
Yeah, good. And we miss him dearly here, as evidenced by the fact that we still will reach out to him.
Well, he's such a personality and such a wonderful
he is.
guy.
Yeah, and very tough individual,
Absolutely.
right?
Comes from a long line. His father was an A6 pilot.
That's right. And that's, I think that maybe that was some of the inspiration behind him kind of going down the path that he did. So, if Mike happens to be watching, we miss you, Mike, and thanks for helping us connect here. And we'll kind of dive into it a little bit. Obviously, Hampton Roads has a massive service-oriented population, yes. Multiple bases, and a huge population of sailors, soldiers, former military veterans. And so when a conflict like this begins, it hits close to home. Because not only are there people here who have experienced conflict before, but there are those who are here now who will be going off to be a part of this. And there are those who are from here who are already in that area.
They're out there in harm's way.
In harm's way. So when you are a service member, a sailor, a pilot, a soldier, and a conflict like this begins, what is that like mentally and emotionally, knowing what's to come? What is the start of something like this?
Well, your focus is on the mission, of course, and of course, if you're in charge of a group of people, your focus is on the group of people that you're actually taking care of, and the mission and what you have to accomplish. And of course, it's a 12-hour day out there and more. Actually, our young people work more than that, but it's a scheduled 12-hour day. So you're busy for 12 hours of the day doing your mission, whatever that mission is. And whether it's on the flight deck or whether it's down in engineering in one of the ships, they're busy for 12 hours a day and more.
And I want to stay on the leadership part of this, because you have led large groups of people during your time in service.
I was fortunate enough to be in command of Amphibious Task Force West in San Diego in 2003 for Iraqi freedom, and that was 7 ships, 10,000 sailors and Marines, and 100 aircraft going over from San Diego to the Persian Gulf War.
And so, what is your, I guess, strategy in terms of leadership? Something like this has begun. You've got thousands of people working under you who are going to be involved. How do you approach the service members that you lead? I mean, what is your method in that case?
Well, the first thing is you have to take care of their needs, their personal needs, and look after that. But I think you have to have buy-in. A lot of people think that in the military, you order people to do something, they're going to do it. You have to inspire people to do the things that you want them to do. They have to buy into the mission. We had a thing on the ship called Captain's Call, which is you go through each enlisted group rank and talk to them and listen to their feedback, what they're going to tell you that they need, and the changes they want to see in a ship or on an aircraft carrier or any entity that you might be involved in. You need to get their feedback, their buy-in, and what they're going to do, and you need to give them the individual capability of doing the job. It was interesting. I took the ship to Vladivostok. I had the command of the USS Dubuque, and we took it to Vladivostok. And the Russian VCNO came all the way from Moscow to Vladivostok to visit the ship. And we were up on the bridge of the ship. We were putting 7,000 Russians through the ship a day, visiting the ship. So he walked up, and we were on the bridge of the ship, and he said, "Captain, tell me, how do you get a ship 35 years old in this good a shape?" I pointed to the young petty officer over there that was on the navigation table. I said, "Because of him." I said, "You have a different philosophy. You have officers in charge of small things. We give a petty officer, a young enlisted guy, who's 19, 20, 22 years old, we give him the responsibility, and he or she takes that responsibility and takes care of it, and then we take care of them."
Yeah, and since you kind of brought us there, I want to stay with that ship maintenance, that ship upkeep and repair, and making sure that not only is everything working, but that it's livable, because people are living on these ships for months at a time. I want to focus in on one of our ships in particular. USS Gerald R. Ford has had an unbelievable deployment here. I mean, they were on their regular deployment, they went to the Caribbean, and now to the Middle East. When a deployment like that stretches well beyond what those aboard were anticipating, what is that like? How are they able to maintain their resolve, maintain their discipline? What is it like for them emotionally to know we were supposed to be home this many months ago, but we've got work to do, and so now we're extending this, we're moving forward? How do they pull that off?
It's the inspiration thing that I was talking about earlier. They need to understand and fully buy into what you're doing. You know, why are we here? What are we doing? And what difference does it make to our country? And the contribution that you individually are making to that particular thing. I mean, I remember talking to the ladies on the ship that I had command of, and they said, you know, why is my husband not here for the birth of my child? And I said, you know, he was there for the most important part, the conception of the child, but, you know, if you're having a normal pregnancy, then he doesn't need to be there for that pregnancy to culminate in a child being born. We have other people that can help you, and we did. We actually helped them. We had an ombudsman program, and we had people watching out for that individual. But if you have a complication of the pregnancy, then we send the individual back. In other words, if the lady was having a problem with the pregnancy, we would send the sailor back. But that sailor, that individual sailor, if he leaves or she leaves, they have to be replaced by somebody else. And somebody else needs to take another job. And those jobs are all important on the ship. All the jobs that we do on the ship are important. And each individual has a responsibility for his or her own section or part of that ship, and the maintenance of that ship, or the protection of that ship, or the fighting of that ship. And it's critical that they stay out there. So it's important.
Yeah, and when it comes to the families, you talk about specific situations, but any family member that is not able to be with their spouse, son, daughter, brother, what's the communication like with families? You know, how are they able to maintain that?
It's much different than it was, say, 30 years ago.
Right.
When I deployed on the USS John F. Kennedy, the first John Kennedy, in the early 80s, we didn't have the internet. The internet is the new capability that we have that we didn't have. So you can actually get on this computer right here, and you can flip it open on a certain time and a certain day and talk to your wife physically by Skype on a telephone line connection or an internet connection. You can physically talk to them and stay with them. So you can get those updates. You can make phone calls. I mean, I remember standing on the bridge of my ship off the coast of Japan, talking to somebody on the East Coast about something that I had a concern about, something that I wanted for the ship or something that I needed for the ship, talking to Washington, D.C., to NAVC, something that I wanted. Those capabilities are much different than what we had. So all we had back then was snail mail. And, for example, in World War II, my grandparents didn't hear from my uncle for 2.5 years while he was gone. He didn't write very much, but that was part of the problem. But it was still, you know, you send a letter out, you may get a response in 6 months. Different now.
Yeah.
You can make a phone call. If there's a problem, they know about it. They can talk about it. If it's a serious problem, they have Navy relief for Navy and Marine Corps, and they get that sailor or Marine back here where they need to be to take care of their family if that happens. So transportation and communication are so much better than they used to be, and I think that makes a huge difference. I think that's why these young people are better able to tolerate the long employments, where it was very difficult on a 9-month employment on the USS Kennedy. As a matter of fact, at the halfway point, we actually send people, we had a 3-week import period in Palma de Mallorca, and we imported people from home. We rented airplanes and had people come home, and those people, when the airplane landed, people from our ship got on the ship and went back to their homes in Norfolk and in Jacksonville.
Wow.
Don't have to do that anymore. We're in contact with people every day.
Yeah.
And that's the way it should be. Now, one of the things that we are able to do is, and we have to be able to do, is when we're going into a critical operation, is switch that switch off and make sure that is secure. So we can talk to people while they're out there, but when it comes time to an operation, you switch that switch off and go secure and go what we call MCON, which is no emissions.
What would be, and that's, I want to stay on that. What would be a scenario where that would take place?
When we're starting an operation like this operation that we're in right now, we would before, as we went into the Persian Gulf, we would probably go to MCON and switch off all electronic communications, and then as we start the operation, we would gradually let them come back on, or have periods where we would come back on, where we would take the ship out of the combat area or move it further away from the combat area and turn all the internet and stuff back on, and then turn it back off when we go back into action.
Yeah. So it can vary, and
yes.
there are ways that you can kind of re-access that.
But the good news is it's there for them, whereas before it wasn't. Also on the education way, we actually can educate people. We have extensive libraries on these ships now, the carriers in particular, where we have computers set up in the library where they can actually go to class on the ship. And it really makes a huge difference. For the Navy that we have today is totally different than the Navy we had before in the 1970s and 80s.
And can we stay with some of the changes even? And I would even ask about from when you retired in 2003?
2004.
2004. I knew I had that wrong. When you retired in 2004 compared to now, what are some other big differences that you see?
Well, that huge difference is the availability of the internet. We were just beginning to touch the internet when I left the service. I had a computer in almost every shop on the ship that I had, and it was set up for an internet. We were able to do that. Now it's almost in every space and almost in every different cubicle. They have the ability to get on a computer and talk to the spouse when the computer is on. When we actually have the internet on the ships, they're allowed to do that.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest difference, is almost instant communication. Pick up the phone, turn on the computer, and talk to your family.
Yeah, that's great.
That's a huge difference.
Huge for the servicemen, huge for the families. And I know certainly helps a lot. I want to ask, when we have a ship like USS Gerald R. Ford that is now sort of parked in those Middle Eastern waters offshore, what are those sailors seeing and doing day in and day out? Because obviously this is not a ground invasion at this point in time. What are the people aboard that ship doing and seeing day to day? What are their duties? What are their desires? What are their goals, I guess is a better way to put it.
Well, that ship is a city.
Right.
A big floating city with 5,000 people on board that has its own airport. Okay, and you don't have to do much with traffic because you don't have any cars going by, but there are little trucks on top of the flight deck that do stuff, move airplanes around, that sort of stuff. But they have to maintain that airport and everything that supports that airport. And that's what their mission and their focus is supporting that airport. From the folks down in engineering that are dealing with the nuclear plant, from the folks that are doing with all the auxiliary plants, the air conditioning, the airflow in the thing, the sewage that has to be taken care of, the food preparation. And that's another thing that needs to be mentioned. We supply these ships constantly. So every 11 to 13 days, a ship goes offline and goes and refuels. So they need gas. Even if they're an Arleigh Burke, they're going to be drinking DFM, which is distillate fuel marine, to propel that ship. So just in the operations of that, it's $39 million a day to operate what we're doing in the Persian Gulf. I think it's higher than that, but that's the minimum probably that we need to take care of the fuel and all the other things. But every 13 days, we take off, we go alongside another ship while we're there. We take about 3 or 4 hours and we get fruits and vegetables and all the other stuff that we need, eggs, milk, all the other stuff that we need to survive, and fuel and ammunition. to continue the fight that we're in right now.
Yeah, and I was actually lucky enough to go visit on an aircraft carrier for a story with Mike Gooding back when I was a photographer and he was here as a reporter. And that is something that stood out to me maybe more so than anything else, is how the ship becomes its own ecosystem. I mean,
Yes,
it really is its
everything
own
on it.
society on there that is kind of just running and just humming. So it was remarkable to see as well. I want to go back to something you said before, and your answer to multiple questions I've had has been about inspiration. And as a leader, making sure you're able to instill the mission and inspire those who you lead to fulfill their duty and to do what they are set out to do. Now, when we talk 18, 19, and 20-year-olds, I feel like I know that when I was between 18 and 20, and obviously I had not enlisted and taken on this responsibility, but by default, if you decide to do that, there is a certain inspiration within you, I would imagine. But 18, 19, and 20-year-olds can be a little bit more difficult they're still growing up. And so knowing that they're young, on the younger side, and for those who this is their first time experiencing something like this, is there a particular message that you would look to instill in them? You know that you have a subset of those working under you who are ready for this. But for those who are a little bit more young, and there may even be fear, I think it would be a natural emotion perhaps in a situation like this. How do you handle that?
Well, we talked about inspiration, and I think
Right.
the most important thing you can do for them is to explain to them what their contribution means, what they're doing. How does it relate to what's happening on the flight deck, getting
Right.
pilots in the air? How does someone in engineering that's working on the auxiliaries, the air conditioning, the airflow, or the CHT system, which is the sewer system, basically, how does someone, or a hull tech, which is a guy or gal that does welding on the ship, how do we inspire them? And that is to explain to them what they're doing and how it makes the difference to the rest of the ship, how it contributes to the ship, that without them, you couldn't do that mission.
Right.
You know, if that guy in the air conditioning shop doesn't do his duty, or she misses something and makes a mistake and the air conditioning goes down, not only could it affect where the people are living in the berthing areas, but it could also affect those areas where we're using cooling to take care of computers and combat systems that make a difference to the ship. So all of those things, you have to have them understand and make them understand. And I think that's the key, is not saying, no, you just do what you're told. Don't worry about it. You explain to them, because they're smart and they're articulate, and they need to understand what their contribution means. And I think that's the importance. Every person on that ship, there's a picture of an Arleigh Burke there coming in. Every person on that ship has a duty, and what they're doing has a contribution to what happens on the ship and what their part of the mission is and how successful. Even those folks right there, the line handlers, what they do is extremely important.
Right.
You know, maintaining the ship,
Right.
keeping the ship functioning. A ship, you just constantly have to take care of a ship, painting, chipping, taking care of the metal on the ship, taking care of the computer systems on the ship, taking care of little electric motors, just things that need to be taken care of. They need to understand how to do that and what their contribution means. And it means a lot.
Yeah. And we talk about a small community. And you speak about how, just like in a community, in any community, every single person has to pitch in to make sure that community runs on its own. I think that's very insightful and incredibly, I appreciate that answer. And then the other part of a community is every community has, for lack of a better word, a spirit to it. And there are good times within communities, within cities, within groups, and then there are more difficult times. And I know that I've been lucky enough to be friends with some who were in service and are still in service. And when I'm around them and their coworkers, friends, they can be some of the funniest, most jovial, lighthearted people around. And I know they can take that spirit with them to work during regular times. I'm wondering if, when a conflict like this begins, does anything change about the tenor of that community aboard the ship? Is there a level of seriousness that is amplified, or are people able to continue basically the way they were before?
No, it intensifies.
It does.
when you're getting ready to do a mission and you turn off that internet and you start to tell them what we're doing and how we're doing it, they get very serious about what they're doing, each and one of those individuals, and they understand what they're doing and how important it is and the contribution that they're making. And of course, there are different divisions on the ship that have different responsibilities, and they get in a kind of a competition. What's the better division? You know, is it the supply division? Is it the auxiliaries division? Is it the engineering division? Is it the combat systems division? You know, all those different divisions on the ship have an esprit de corps within their own little small organizations, and they really take it seriously, and it ramps up when you start that. Now, after you're in the operation for a while, it kind of evens out a little bit, and they get kind of the flow of action of what's going to happen. For example, when you go into 24-hour ops on the ship, for the pilots and the air crew and the people on the flight deck, that's extremely intense. And so you're getting up in the morning, or you're getting up at night, whenever it is you're assigned to fly, and you go fly, you brief that mission, you get in the aircraft, you fly that mission, you come back, you debrief that mission, and you go to get something to eat, and you go to bed.
Yeah.
Because in about 6 hours, you're up doing the same thing again and again and again. And
Right.
you do that for about 3 or 4 days in a row, and then you change the cycle.
Yeah. And you talk about flying. As a helo pilot, I would imagine that you have been in airspace before where there's a level of danger and risk. I mean,
Yes.
anytime you go up in an aircraft, there's a level of danger and risk.
Yes.
But, I mean, that could maybe come from external factors. Are you able, you know, it's something that we could probably never truly understand, but are you able to give us a sense of what it's like to go up in that helicopter and know that you're flying into an area where there is combat, or there is at least the threat of combat?
Well, one of the things that we would have to do, particularly now with the, you see the MH-60s flying over here all the time, and their mission, one of their missions is to deliver troops to do different things like special operations and that sort of stuff. That's one of the most serious operations. And when you have to do that, the planning and execution are extremely important and extremely critical how you do that. And of course, the support that the other people provide for you is extremely important. And so the seriousness of that mission and how it goes off is extremely important. And to get in, to fly a group of people in at night on night vision goggles, land in the middle of the desert or some other out place, or land on an oil rig or wherever you need to go to get the mission done, drop those troops off, either take them, go back and let them do their mission and then come back and pick them up, or they finish their mission and you come and pick them some other way. All those things have to be done correctly and precisely. Otherwise, people lose their lives. And we have been very precise on how we do missions over there. And you can see we've been very fortunate that we've only lost 7 people so far, and they're people that were in stationary places that probably got hit by a missile or a drone coming in that they weren't able to defend against.
And you also talked about being stationed overseas for long periods of time. When you are stationed in a place where suddenly it comes to conflict, when you are stationed overseas, not necessarily on a ship, but stationary, and conflict breaks out in that region where you are now under threat from a physical perspective, what is that like? Are you able to speak a little bit to what that is like?
Well, what you try to do is minimize the ability for someone to harm you. And so you look at the systems that are out there that can help you. And if you're stationed at a place that has a military facility, it could be a supply facility, it could be Bahrain, the capital over there, which we have 5th Fleet over there. You look at all the external factors that could hamper your life or take your life from you, and what you can do to mitigate those circumstances and what has to be done, and what you can do individually, to minimize that. Just the basic going to work traffic of going to work every day over there is extremely important to realize where you are, what you're doing, and how the external threat could come after you. It's a constant source of thought process that you have to always have that in the back of your mind.
Yeah.
You know, how could I be threatened? What's that truck doing over there?
Mm-hmm.
Why has that truck been there for the last couple of hours? What is it doing there? You know, you need to be aware of what the situation is over there and what's going on with external factors that could hamper your or take your life.
That mindset that you just mentioned, constant awareness, constantly being alert for external factors that could endanger your life. What does that do to you psychologically? I mean, is that taxing, you know, for it, when living like that day in and day out?
Absolutely, it's
Yeah.
taxing, and of course, I think it has a wear down period on it. That's why we try to take these deployments, for example. Deployments actually start out being 6 months long.
Mm-hmm.
So we look at that and we say, okay, how can we make this the most comfortable environment to work in for 6 months?
Mm-hmm.
Over there, you're assigned over there for maybe a year and a half to 2 years. Same thing.
Yeah.
You don't want to keep them in that environment completely and entirely for 3 or 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
You need to give them some relief to get them out of that environment because it does wear and tear on your psyche.
I bet. I mean, I can only imagine. It's a mindset that I've never been forced to have. In the, you know, for the most part, growing up, the privileged way that I was able to grow up. So understanding how exhausting that would be, but knowing that you have to get up and do it again the next day.
Well, imagine what the greatest generation went through
Mm-hmm.
in fighting World War II.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, contrast as we're going into Okinawa to take over that island, which was the last stepping stone to going into Japan.
Mm.
We were going to operate from there, and the Operation Olympic was to going into southern Kyushu, the southern island of Japan. And imagine those young sailors and airmen on the carriers and on the ships off the coast of Okinawa that were attacked by the kamikazes.
Mm.
Constant worry about what you were going to go through. And it takes a toll.
Mm-hmm.
PTSD is one of the things that we now understand.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't understand it back in World War II, but we understand it now because we've gotten a lot better psychologically with the treatment of diseases that are psychological.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't have that back then. But just imagine and the threat of the kamikazes coming down from Japan on those ships, a destroyer, a small destroyer, which is a microcosm of that large organization that you're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
and how they would have to worry about that.
Yeah, and this will be my last question because we've kept you far beyond the 20 minutes that we said we would. It's been a real pleasure to be able
That's
to talk
okay.
to you. You mentioned that the psychological aspect of it and how there's been a lot of improvement in understanding and dealing with some of the consequences psychologically to combat. Just in the same way that the armed forces is gearing up and getting into action as we approach this situation, is there also a sort of a follow-up call to action for all of the services that will be required for those who, when they come back?
Yes, we have done a lot of research, and of course, the drugs that we have to combat these sort of things are much more effective, and we didn't have them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in the Vietnam War, for example, we didn't have a sailor or a soldier or an airman or a Marine or that would come back and would be able to go to a psychoanalysis and find out what was bothering them and then give them some kind of substance that would help them
Mm-hmm.
get them back to normalcy. We have that now. We've done the research and we're getting better on it.
Mm-hmm.
And also the stigma of PTSD is not what it was before.
Yeah.
People understand that it's a real disease and
Right.
we need to do something about it. And they're confident, and we ask them to go and get some help from it.
Mm-hmm.
From whatever the disease is that they have. And
Yeah.
PTSD is a serious disease now.
Yeah, and it's good to know that there are preparations, safeguards in place, knowing that we have so many who are now in those stressful situations that you talked about and in potential combat situations. Captain Golden, I can't tell you how much we appreciate having you in here.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, your ability to lend some perspective and some insight, and I think it's important because we read so many stories, so many headlines about what our troops are going through. And obviously, it's something where you want to support and sympathize in every single way, but continuing to remember what it's like in the real life situations of those who are involved in this conflict is really important. So thanks so much for hanging out with us. And
well, we need to support our folks over there, particularly from this area, but our whole country. We talked. My wife and I talked about the Greatest Generation and the sacrifices they made. We need to make a small sacrifice now to get rid of this terrific menace that has killed well over 1,000 people and injured many, many more, directly involved from this particular regime.
Yeah,
and it's long overdue what we're doing.
Yeah, and at 31 years of service, retired in 2004, and back here lending us some of that insight. And I think what we need Mike Gooding on one microphone. We need you on the other microphone. I feel like that's the real conversation.
Oh, we have so much fun.
See, that's like I can only do a vague Mike Gooding impression. Having the two of you guys be able to really dig into some of this stuff.
Well, he's been lucky. He's been there for a couple of the very informative briefs. For example, we had the commanding officer, Gerald Ford. We had the admiral that was in charge of that battle group come in and talk to us, who had been a 7-year-old in Jacksonville when his commanding officer father was my commanding officer. He was a 7-year-old, and there he was standing in front of our group with Mike Gooding sitting there, and he was briefing us on what operations were like in the Persian Gulf.
Yeah.
And he's now a 1-star, and he's now today a 2-star Admiral Moninger.
Yeah. And there were times where I would walk up to interviews with Mike, and the embrace and respect that he used to get from everyone, from those long-time connections of people who knew that he was doing everything in his power to do right by the reporting and do right by the viewer and do right by those he was reporting on. So it was impressive to see, and just talking to you here, it kind of brings back some of the memories.
You and Joe used to do that Christmas show that you go out every Christmas and with folks that are on deployment and have them do a whole series on what's going on while they're away at Christmas overseas.
Yeah.
And you put that program on, and I remember Joe Flanagan coming over and doing that program back in 1997 on the USS Nassau.
Oh, very good. See, now that's the type of thing. We miss Joe Flanagan and Mike Gooding around here. Those are the types of stories that it's good to remember and it's good to maybe re-engage with. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yourself as well, sir. We appreciate you very much coming in here and talking to us, and hopefully we can do it again sometime.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot.
All right, Captain. We appreciate it. A real treat for us here on Live Impact News. Captain Golden here in studio to give us more perspective on everything that's happening in the conflict with Iran right now.